Picture this. You wake up tomorrow morning, look out your window, and watch your neighbor's oak tree casually stroll down the street, its massive root system moving like tentacles. The roses in your garden have formed a convoy and are marching toward the park. Welcome to a world where plants can uproot themselves and move to escape danger. Buckle up, because we're about to explore how this single change would flip our entire world upside down. Let's start with the obvious. If plants could move, agriculture as we know it would collapse overnight. Imagine trying to harvest wheat that runs away when you approach with a combine harvester. Farmers would need to become plant whisperers, negotiating with their crops instead of simply planting and harvesting them. But here's where it gets really interesting. Plants would likely develop complex communication networks, warning each other about threats through chemical signals, root networks, and possibly even primitive vocalizations. Think about it. If a forest fire starts, the first trees to detect smoke wouldn't just stand there and burn. They'd uproot and flee, sending chemical alarm signals to neighboring plants. Within hours, entire forests would be on the move, creating massive plant migrations that would make wildebeest herds look tiny by comparison. These mobile forests would follow optimal growing conditions, chasing rain patterns and avoiding droughts like massive green nomads. But what happens when different plant species want the same territory? We'd witness something unprecedented in Earth's history: plant warfare. Imagine aggressive invasive species like kudzu not just spreading through reproduction, but actively marching into new territories, displacing native plants through sheer numbers and coordination. Oak trees might form defensive alliances with maple trees to protect their ancestral groves from invading pine armies. The implications get even stranger when we consider that mobile plants would need to evolve entirely new anatomical structures. Roots would transform from stationary nutrient-gathering systems into complex locomotive organs, possibly resembling massive underground tentacles or even primitive legs. Plants might develop rudimentary brains or at least sophisticated decision-making centers to process threats, navigate terrain, and coordinate group movements. Here's a mind-bending possibility. Plants could become the planet's dominant intelligent species. While humans spent millions of years developing tools and technology, plants would have had hundreds of millions of years to evolve mobility and intelligence. In this scenario, humans might find themselves as the hunted rather than the hunters. Imagine carnivorous plants that actively stalk prey, or defensive tree species that view humans as a threat to be eliminated. Urban planning would face a complete revolution. Cities couldn't exist as static structures when the local vegetation might decide to relocate en masse. We'd need to develop entirely new architectural concepts, mobile cities that could follow beneficial plant communities, or perhaps underground human settlements to avoid conflicts with surface-dwelling plant civilizations. The economic implications are staggering. Property values would become meaningless when your beautiful oak-shaded backyard could literally walk away. Insurance companies would need completely new categories for plant abandonment and vegetation migration damage. Real estate would shift from location-based to negotiation-based, where homeowners would need to maintain relationships with local plant communities to keep them around. But perhaps the most fascinating development would be the evolution of human-plant partnerships. Smart humans would quickly realize that cooperation beats confrontation. We might see the emergence of symbiotic cities where humans provide protection and care for plants in exchange for oxygen, food, and shelter. Imagine urban planners working directly with mobile forests to design living, breathing cities that could adapt and relocate based on environmental conditions. Plants might even develop their own primitive technologies. Mobile trees could learn to use their branches as tools, manipulating their environment in ways we can't imagine. They might cultivate fungi as we cultivate crops, or domesticate insects and small animals for protection and assistance. Picture a world where massive sequoias train squirrel armies to defend against human encroachment. The scientific community would be revolutionized. Botany would become more like animal behavioral science, with researchers studying plant migration patterns, social structures, and intelligence levels. We'd need plant psychologists, plant negotiators, and perhaps even plant rights activists. The legal system would grapple with questions like, can a tree own property? Do plants have rights? What happens when a forest decides to relocate across international borders? Climate change would take on entirely new dimensions. Instead of forests dying from changing conditions, they'd simply migrate to more suitable climates. This could actually accelerate climate adaptation, as plant communities could respond to environmental changes within years rather than decades. However, it could also create massive ecological disruptions as entire biomes shift rapidly across continents. Food production would require completely new approaches. Instead of traditional farming, we might develop sophisticated negotiation systems where humans trade services for plant-produced food. Imagine specialized diplomats whose job is to convince apple orchards to settle near human communities, or wheat negotiators who arrange annual grain production contracts with mobile crop collectives. The strangest possibility of all? Plants might develop their own civilization parallel to ours. With mobility and intelligence, they could build structures, create art, and even develop philosophy. We might find ourselves sharing the planet with an entirely different form of conscious life, one that thinks in geological timescales and experiences reality through chemical signals and root networks. Religion and philosophy would be fundamentally challenged. Many human belief systems are based on the assumption that we're the dominant intelligent species on Earth. Discovering that plants have been conscious and mobile all along would force us to completely reconsider our place in the natural order. Some humans might worship mobile plant entities as gods, while others might view them as competitors to be eliminated. International relations would become incredibly complex. What happens when a mobile rainforest decides to cross from Brazil into Peru? Do plants need passports? Could nations form alliances with mobile forests for strategic advantage? Imagine military conflicts where armies of weaponized trees march alongside human soldiers. The most intriguing aspect might be the development of plant culture and society. Mobile plants would likely develop complex social hierarchies, possibly based on age, size, or species. Ancient trees might become revered elders in plant society, leading massive migrations and making decisions for entire forest communities. We might witness the emergence of plant cities, where different species organize themselves into specialized districts. So what would this mean for human survival and prosperity? We'd be forced to evolve from dominators of nature to partners with it. Those who learn to communicate and cooperate with plant communities would thrive, while those who remained adversarial would find themselves isolated and resource poor. The ultimate question becomes, in a world where plants can escape danger by moving, who would really be in control of Earth's future? Would it still be humans? Or would we find ourselves as junior partners in a planet-wide civilization dominated by ancient, intelligent forests that have finally decided to take an active role in shaping their world?